Hey guys, I'm back with another video on how to draw characters in perspective. Last time we drew this character like we were looking down on him, so the camera was above him. And in this video, we're going to draw it so that we're going to be looking up at him. So the camera is going to be really low. And some of my subscribers, some of my viewers have said that this is known as frog view, which I think is pretty funny. It's also known as a low angle in movies, or even upshot or hero shot. So we're gonna get this started and I'm pretty excited. Alright, so let's get this started. So the first principle that we're gonna talk about is what happens to vertical lines when we go from a front view like this into a low angle when the camera drops low. So vertical lines. And by vertical lines, I mean for instance, here I've drawn two vertical lines next to our character, and when these lines are up and down and parallel, that tells me that this character is pretty much standing straight, and the camera is like a front view. They could also represent the lines on the arms. See these vertical lines, or the legs, or even the sides of the waist. And so now we're gonna switch to camera 2, and I'm gonna use my box just like the last time to show you guys what happens to these vertical lines when we drop the camera lower. So let's take a look. Alright guys, so I have our character, and I remember I taped him to a box. And the camera is at about waist level, so this is pretty much front view. The vertical lines are going up and down, and they are parallel. He's pretty high. It's almost like he's standing on a building. And now I'm going to lower the camera, and I want you guys to just observe what happens to these vertical lines and their angle. Okay, so I'm just going to lower the camera. Here we go. Lowering the camera. See what's happening to those vertical lines? So the vertical lines, looks like that as the lines head towards the head, they become more narrow. So here at the bottom, wide, but on your screen, as you're looking at it, you can see that they become more narrow, right? So that's the first principle, is vertical lines, when the camera is low, these vertical lines want to become more narrow as it goes up a character. Or I like to think of it as the lines want to become an A. It wants to slowly change angle, bend to become an A. And that's the first principle. Okay, so here's the second principle, and what I'm going to do for this principle is I am going to turn my box around to this weird diagram. I don't know if you can see it. So what I've done is I have a line and I've split it in half. So, I just eyeballed it. So this half is the same as this half. And now what I want you to observe is what happens to this middle line when the camera drops low. Like, is it going to be in the middle, or is it going to move closer to the top or closer to the bottom? So let's take a look. All right, so I'm going to drop my camera, get really low, and maybe you could even measure on your screen, your computer screen, but that middle line has actually moved closer to the top, right? It's a little closer to the top than it is to the bottom, and that's because of perspective. The camera is closer to this bottom half than it is to the top half, so the bottom half looks bigger or a little longer, right? So that's the second principle, is middle lines get pushed up. And don't worry if this is confusing, you guys will see it when I do the character demo. Alright, so now we can go on to the third principle. Alright, so the last principle, the third principle, is we're going to take a look at what happens to horizontal lines. So you can see on my character that horizontal lines could be the collarbone, the waistline, or if there's clothes, it could be the bottom of the pants or the sleeves or the wrist. And we're going to do the same thing from last time. I have my cylinder, and what I've done is I've drawn horizontal lines across the cylinder. I'm going to put it on the shelf, and then I'm going to lower the camera, and we're going to see what happens to these lines. Let's check it out. Alright guys, so I have the cylinder on top of our building, or our shelf, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the camera, and you can see that they're pretty much horizontal, right? But as I lower it and look up, here we go, take a look at what happens to these lines. See that? They become curves. So I'll try it again. So I'm going to lower the camera. If I lower it just slightly, the curves become subtle. But if I go really low, much more pronounced. And the curves are sad faces. So they curve like that. Right? So that's the third principle, is horizontal lines, when we look up at a character, they become curves, like sad faces. Aww. Alright guys, now that we've gone through the principles, let's see those principles in action. And I'm going to draw a character next to this character in low angle, in frog view, so we're looking up at him. So I'm just going to start with the head, and I'm going to draw it a little smaller than normal, or try to. Remember, I'm just trying to draw an egg. Ooh, focus. I'm just trying to draw an egg with a chin. And remember, the eye line is a horizontal line, right? So we know to curve the horizontal lines like a sad face, right? So I'm just going to curve it like a sad face. Aw. Just like that. And I'm going to make it so that he's looking a little to the right. So center line, just like that. And real quick, I just want to say that when you draw the eyes, you want to make sure that the eyes are following these curves, like that. And I'm going to draw the nose higher than normal, and the mouth higher than normal. The neck is vertical, so if you want, you can bend the lines a little like that if you want. I think that'll work. And I'm going to draw in top of his shoulders. Now we can start to draw our big guideline, which is these big verticals. So remember, we're going to make the verticals look like an A, like that, right? It gets more narrow as we go towards the top. So I'm going to start at the outside of the shoulders, and I'm going to draw the lines out like that. Okay, so more narrow at the top, wider at the bottom. Cool. And then we can move on to the torso. So here we go, horizontal line. So we know to curve it like a sad face. This is a collarbone, right? Oh yeah, one more thing. So for this view, I'm going to say that his height is going to be the same. We can make him standing at the edge of a building like a hero, right? This is the top of his head, his height. Remember the second principle, right? We take the midway point, which is generally his bottom of his hips. So halfway. Take the midway point of the height, and we're going to push this a little up. So we're going to say his midway point is going to be over here now. Roughly, right? Like that. Because we see more of his lower half than we do his upper half. So this is going to be, maybe that's too much. Just a little bit. It doesn't have to be really dramatic. There we go. All right. So then we have our general guidelines for the angle of this view and the midway point. So now we can draw the bottom of his ribcage. Or actually, let's draw the sides first. So the sides, it's already kind of this shape. So for this view, we take that shape and we're just going to bend it a little. Because all the lines on the sides, they want to bend like that. So what you can do is just draw it so that it's not as angled as this one. Kind of like that. And this bottom is going to be a little higher. And we can draw in his waist, sides of his torso, bending the lines again, like that. Draw the top of his hips, curving it like a sad face. And then all we gotta do, bring it down, curve the bottom of the hips, just like that. And you can already start to see, right? It looks like we're looking up at him. And all we had to do was angle the sides in like that and curve the horizontal lines. So what I want to do for the hips right here is I want to draw some lines like this and curve it like that, because this tells me that this is the bottom of his hips. It's like his butt. Helps me to see it dimensionally. Okay, so now we're going to draw his legs. And remember, I'm going to put in his ankles. His ankles right there. So remember that normally the knees are halfway between the bottom of his hips and the ankles, right? Halfway. But we know for this view that we want to push those halfway lines up more. So I'm just going to make his knee maybe about there. Right here. Like that. Now we can draw his legs. So his legs, they sort of have this angle, right? So when we draw it here, we're going to take that angle and we're going to bend it like that, because it wants to slowly become an A. It's not going to become an A, but just like that. So I'm going to start here at the outside of the hips, come down, pretty much follow this line, so you can draw it parallel. And same for the inside. Now I'm going to round the top like this. Sad face. So it's a cylinder, right? And this shows me that the cylinder is connecting to the hips just by that curve. Do the same for the other side. Inside and cylinder with that curve. Now for the knee, normally it's a horizontal, so we can curve it. Curve the other side. And we take the shape here, remember to bend it outward. Same for the other side. So when I'm drawing it, it's almost like the ankles seem to be wider than I normally would draw them. And close off the ankle. Check this out. Big curve for his shoe. Same thing, big curve. Draw this line down, draw this line down. And then we have his shoe as a guideline. Zoom out, and we can see his body. Looks like we're looking up at him. Now we can draw his arms. So I'm going to zoom in. And if you want, you can put center lines. So starting at the outside of his shoulder, just going to draw, remember, vertical lines, we're going to bend them. Bend them slightly. Curve the elbow. Let's do the same for the other side. Curve it for the elbow. Now we draw his forearm, line it up with the bottom of his hips, this line. So I'm just going to rough in his arms, his hands. Zoom back out, and you guys can see the effect. So on the left is just a straight on front view, and here on the right we have the frog view looking up at a character. And all we did was angle the verticals in like that, like an A, and make sure the horizontals are curving like sad faces. So now what I'm going to do is, just like the last time, I'm going to erase this, leave a ghost of an image, and do a quick ink sketch and try to do the same clothing that I did on the last character in the last video, so you guys can see the comparison from a low angle and a high angle. So check it out. Alright guys, so that was just a quick sketch of the low angle, the frog view, and just to quickly go over the drawing, I'm just going to zoom in so you guys can see the finished result. Just a quick flyby. And I drew in some clouds and the building to help with this angle. And just wanted to talk about the principles real quick. So on the left, we have front view, just a straight on shot. The verticals are like this, and the horizontals are perfect horizontals. So when we get to the low angle, we're looking up, we want to make sure that the verticals are like that, pointing or getting more narrow as we head up, right? And the horizontals, you want to make sure that they are sad face. Horizontals, like the waist, bottom of the pants, even in folds in clothes, you can use horizontals. And for the bird eye view, looking down on the character, we want to make sure that the verticals do that. They get more narrow as we go down the character. And for horizontals, we want to make sure that the horizontals are not sad face, but we want to make sure that the horizontals are happy face. And I guess the third principle that we talked about was the midway point. So here the midway point is directly halfway between the top of the head to the bottom of the feet. But for this view, midway point gets pushed up a little bit. And for this view, midway point gets pushed down a bit. And that goes for like the bottom of the hips, which is a midway point. But also, if you look at the elbow, which is a midway point of the arm, you can push it up and push it down. Or the knee. Push the knee up and push the knee down. And hopefully, those principles will get you guys started in drawing your characters in these different perspectives. And I've just tilted it slightly, so it's a little easier to draw. You can actually, if you want to get way more perspective, you can just change these angles like that or like that. And that's a little more difficult to draw, so I just wanted to make it just a little perspective. But hopefully that'll get you guys started and give you guys some principles, some mental checklists, some tips for you guys, so you guys can just start to draw your characters with more dimension, which is a lot of fun to do. All right, guys, so try that out, have fun, and keep up the drawing, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.